Got middle school, high school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in the back. If you are below the age of 18 and you don't feel like being in here, go out there and a teacher will catch you. And if not, keep running. Eventually you run into the playground and at least you can have fun out there. I'm not a parent, so... Had a spare week in our sermon planning, so I went, oh man, what are we going to do? Well, it's Halloween. I think it's a good time to talk about the spookiest book in the Bible, at least what most of us think is the spookiest book in the Bible. We're going to talk about Revelation a little bit. I know I'm kind of cheating. We did a letter from the book of Revelation a couple weeks back, but I noticed a thing. If you've been in the church a long time, you've heard sermons on Revelation before, you generally get two versions. You either get the letters, which are pretty straightforward. There's a little weird stuff in there, but they're still just letters, and we can kind of get those, and that's okay. If you're not familiar with the book of Revelation, the first three chapters are mostly letters to various churches throughout modern-day Turkey. Or you'll get some of the middle and end chunks, and those sermons get weird sometimes, like really, really weird. And I think that contributes to our feeling like, man, I can't read that book, I'm just going to stay away from it. That's for the pastors and the preachers, I'm not going to touch it. And I don't want you guys to feel that way, because I feel like Revelation is one of, if not the most beautiful books in all of Scripture. All of Scripture is God-breathed, and it is so effective and helpful in so many areas of our life. But Revelation is just especially beautiful because it gives us so many assurances. And many of us, we need a little bit more assurance in our lives. Things always seem a little bit up in the air for many of us. Whether it's financial difficulties or our concerns for the state of politics in our country or family troubles, we need assurance in our lives. And Revelation is a book that is full of assurances that no matter what comes in this life, eventually God will work things out. In fact, almost every passage in Revelation amounts to that. No matter what's going on right now, God eventually is going to work things out. But it's hidden behind this veil of symbols and cryptic imagery that we aren't used to reading. So my primary purpose today is to work through a pretty strange-looking passage of Revelation, the entirety of Revelation 17. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll see even the really weird passages, we can read them and we can get something out of them that will reassure us, that will reaffirm our faith. But I do kind of have a secondary purpose for picking this specific passage. This passage, as we work through it, is going to talk a lot about the political might of the Roman Empire and how much mightier God is. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we're going into midterm elections. What? Yeah, I know, nothing is sacred anymore. I'm getting political ads everywhere that I go for just about everyone. Usually attack ads, right? And you've seen those. And in just a few weeks here, we're going into midterm elections. That can be a really heated time for many of us. And so I think maybe a passage that talks about the might of God over the might of the strongest political entity of its day, maybe that's appropriate for a time of the year when we're going into such a contentious political time. So we're going to understand Revelation better by the end of today, and we're hopefully going to feel a little bit better about Election Day coming up. That's the hope, okay? Let's do a little bit of context here. Revelation is probably the last book of the Bible written. It's written by John the Apostle while he's in exile on an island in the Mediterranean called Patmos. He is meditating one day, he is in prayer one day, and Jesus appears to him and tells him, I want you to write these things down. And he dictates 7 letters to 7 different churches to him, and then he gives him a vision, and he tells him what parts of the vision to write and what parts of the vision to not write. And this is that vision part of the letter that we're going to look at today. He's getting this crazy, cryptic, strange, alien vision. And as it goes through, many of the images that this vision is going to rely on is references back to the Old Testament. And we'll pick out a few things that are references back to the Old Testament in our passage today. Some of them are stock standard Semitic images that Jews love to use in all sorts of writings. So if you know the Jewish culture, you can pick out those symbols. And some of them are simple references to John's day. Anyone living in the Roman Empire would have understood what they meant. Now, you and I, we don't live in the Roman Empire, right? Right, we live in the United States. So we don't get all of those images, but as we go through, we'll pick them out one at a time, and we'll kind of do some basic math. This symbol plus this symbol plus this symbol equals the point of the passage. That's how you should read the book of Revelation. Very, very simply. As for the situation of the people that John was writing to, well, they weren't having a good time, guys. Persecution on Christians in this period was not as bad as it would be eventually. But people were losing their jobs. They were being forbidden from going into the marketplace and working their jobs or selling the goods that they had produced. In some places, they were being imprisoned, and in a few places, they were even being killed simply because they were Christians. Now, the Roman Empire didn't care if you worshiped Yahweh or if you worshiped their gods. Their concern was that Christians had this thing that they said, that Jesus was the King of Kings. And that was a title that was only to be given to the emperor of Rome. He was the emperor that ruled over many kingdoms. He was the King of Kings. Moreover, Christians would say that they should obey Jesus above anyone else. And that's scary if you're a dictator who wants absolute control over your subjects' lives. That was true then, it's still true today. So Christianity was a threat to these emperors and to their lackeys who wanted full control over their empire because they had a group of people living in their empire that obeyed Jesus, their king, above the Roman emperor. And it scared them. And they began these persecutions. Now, John is writing to them, trying to encourage them, giving them this vision from Jesus, trying to encourage them to stay strong. And one of the images we get is this in Revelation chapter 17, starting in verse 1. One of the 7 angels, these are 7 angels that are introduced just a few chapters before. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came to me, and he said, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her, the kings of earth have committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit to a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and in scarlet and was glittering with gold and precious stones and pearls, and she held a golden cup in her hands that was filled with abominable things and with the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. And when I saw her, I was greatly astonished." That last word there, astonished, can be translated, I was greatly confused, which most of us can empathize with right now, right? So let's go back and let's work through it. Remember, when you're reading Revelation, it's almost like doing math. And I know all you guys loved algebra class in high school, right? Yeah, no, I didn't either, but we're going to get through it. Walk through one symbol at a time. Went back too far. Mitch, help me. Emily, help me. You're not Mitch. Sorry. Can you put me back on verse 1? Thank you. You're the best. Tech team's awesome. We start off with one of the angels, and one of the genre that Revelation is called apocalyptic literature. And besides being highly symbolic, there's normally a guide. Either God himself or an angel walks the prophet through. Now, there's a bunch of different examples of prophetic or apocalyptic literature. Only a few of them are in the Bible. There's a big chunk of it in Daniel. There's a big chunk in Revelation. There's a little bit in Ezekiel. That's about it. There's not very many examples of it in the Bible. There's tons outside the Bible. Jewish people in this period loved this type of literature. So this angel is the guide right now. In a few minutes, he's actually going to give us a little bit of an explanation of all the weird stuff that John's seeing. We're just going to have to hold on for that. And he tells him, I'm going to show you the punishment of a great prostitute. Now, this isn't meant to be an actual person. Remember, Revelation is highly symbolic. So we're going to have to figure out in a minute what this great prostitute symbolizes. We're told she sits by many waters. And waters can often symbolize 2 things in prophecy. They can either symbolize chaos, uncreation, destruction. In Genesis, when you're reading Genesis 1, it says the Spirit of God hovered over the waters or over the abyss. That's what it's symbolizing there. The thing that was there before anything was, a place where people could not exist. But waters can also symbolize human beings, a large number of human beings. And I think that's what's going on here. This great prostitute who sits by many waters, she has dominion over many human beings. Whatever she's symbolizing, she has control of many people. With her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. And adultery is, again, we're just adding symbols together. Adultery is often used as a stand-in for idolatry, for people behaving in ways that God doesn't want them to behave, worshiping things that are not God. The whole book of Hosea uses this extended metaphor where Hosea is asked to marry a prostitute who cheats on him again and again and again, and God says, that's what my people are doing to me. So the adultery here, all these people who God has created, has knitted together in their mother's womb, they are committing adultery. They are cheating on God with whatever this prostitute symbolizes. Even the kings of the earth, the greatest among men, at least as we would see it, even those people, they're deceived, they're led astray, they're cheating on God. So this prostitute, whatever she has control over many people, and she's leading many people into idolatry. John says, the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw this woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered in blasphemous names that had 7 heads and 10 horns. And this beast has actually been introduced already in chapter 13. If we went back and we read chapter 13, this beast walks out of the ocean and is described as having 7 heads and 10 horns and uttering blasphemies against God. Blasphemy means to insult. So this is a being that is insulting God. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. And we'll get an explanation of those in just a minute, but I want to give you a little hint. When you're reading prophecy, when you're reading Revelation, whatever, if a horn shows up, it's a symbol of power. So the woman controls many people, she leads people to idolatry, and she's existing with this beast that is very, very powerful. Now, when the beast shows up in chapter 13, the beast is described as a servant of the great dragon. You want to guess who that is? Satan. So this woman and this beast, they're serving Satan, they're powerful, they control many people, they lead them into idolatry. See, we're just adding things together. You take it slow, it's pretty easy to get. The woman was dressed in purple and in scarlet and was glittering with gold and precious stones and pearls, and she held a golden cup in her hand filled with abominable things and the filth of her adultery. Purple was a royal color. In fact, during certain periods in Roman history, only the emperor and his family could wear purple. Scarlet, which the beast was also described as being scarlet. Do you know how that's significant in this period? It's the color that Roman soldiers wore. Are we starting to get a picture of who maybe John is talking about, who Jesus is speaking about through John? This beast is scarlet, the same color as the Roman armies, and the beast is powerful. Was Rome powerful? It was, very much so. And this woman is dressed also in scarlet, the color of the Roman armies, and in purple, the color of the royal family. I wonder who they're talking about. And she's described as being exceedingly rich. She has gold and precious stones and pearls and a golden cup in her hand. She's filthy rich, and I imagine those emperors, they probably had some money, huh? Do you see what we're talking about here? These are symbols of Rome and of the royal family, and John is going to double down on this in just a moment. But that golden cup in her hand, it's filled with abominable things. It's a reminder that even though she is rich, and even though she seems alluring, and even though the beast is powerful, the stuff that they're peddling is not good. She lives a luxurious life and she seems so appealing, but what she's giving out to the people who follow her is filthy and abominable and wrong. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and abominations of the earth. Now, Babylon, this came up in a sermon just a couple weeks ago. For those of you who are here, when Babylon shows up, it is bad. Yeah, when Babylon shows up, unless you're literally talking about the city of Babylon, when Babylon shows up, it's bad. It's used as a symbol of all the peoples who oppose God. So this prostitute, whatever she symbolizes, she's called Babylon. Now, she can't literally be the city of Babylon because the city didn't exist when this letter was written. So it has to be someone else. She's wearing Roman colors, leading people into idolatry, associated with Satan, associated with power, and she's described as Babylon, as an evil nation that opposes God. Who are we talking about? Rome. Rome. That's the image that we're getting here. So this seems like a super weird passage, but when you break it down, John is saying Rome is a powerful and seductive nation that is leading people away from God. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people and the blood of those who bore testimony about Jesus. And when I saw her, I was greatly confused, astonished, amazed. And indeed, Rome was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, and it would only get worse. While only a few people had been killed by Rome for their faith, many had been imprisoned or forced out of the marketplace, and in the coming decades, many more would be killed by the Roman emperors. There was a great persecution that was beginning to stir in the city of Rome and throughout the empire of Rome. And so Jesus through John describes Rome as being drunk on the blood of martyrs. But he doesn't stop there. The angel sees John's confusion and says this, "The angel said to me, 'Why are you astonished? Why are you confused? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns.'" He says, "Don't worry, buddy. If you're a little bit mixed up right now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an explanation. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss," or another word for the waters, for the ocean, "up out of the ocean and go to its destruction." We'll pause just there for a moment. This description, the beast that once was, now is, or now is not, and yet will come up, is a poetic way that some Roman historians wrote about the Empire of Rome. There's a period in their history not too far in the past where it looked like Rome was about to collapse, and they had a series of good emperors who resurrected the empire, at least for a period of time. This would actually happen again in just a few centuries before Rome would finally fully collapse. Rome is described this way, and so this is another hint to John and a hint to his readers that, hey, we're talking about the Empire of Rome. It is this beast that once was, now is not, and yet will come up. But there's a promise here that these historians don't write, that this beast, this empire, this kingdom is going to go to its destruction. It's not going to last. And that's the first good reminder I'd really like you guys to hold on to here. Political powers that seem impossible to topple never last. The Roman Empire was an invincible nation, and yet it fell apart. Alexander's Greece seemed unstoppable, and yet it was stopped and then collapsed. And as dearly attached as many of us are even to our own nation, it will not last forever. Even if this nation lasts until Jesus returns, when he returns, there will be no borders and no divisions. This nation will not last forever. The inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see this beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come. So individuals who do not know Jesus, whose names are not written in the book of life, they will be amazed by Rome, and they'll be tempted to follow it because they don't know the King of Kings, and Rome is the next best thing they can find. The angel continues, "This calls for a mind with wisdom." This is a phrase that's used in apocalyptic literature to say, hey, pay attention to this. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. Rome is also known as the city on 7 hills. Who are we talking about? Rome. And the woman sits there. Why? Because the woman, dressed in royal colors, is a symbol of this royal family, more specifically, or less specifically, of the city of Rome itself. We'll get to that in just a moment. My apologies, we'll get to that right now. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. The city of Rome sits there, the seat of the empire and the seat of royal power, and in a few verses, she'll specifically be called a city. This woman is almost a double symbol. The royal family and the city of Rome itself, the seat of political power in the nation of Rome. There are also 7 kings. Now, this is obnoxious because he just said the heads, they're 7 hills, and the woman sits there, so we know that we're talking about Rome. But he says, but they symbolize something else as well. They symbolize 7 kings. And the number 7 is significant, and it shows up in the Bible a lot. Does anyone know what it means? Perfection or completion. The right amount is normally a good way to handle it. There are 7 kings, the right amount of kings. Not a literal 7, but the right amount of them. 5 has fallen. 5, their rule is over. They are dead. They are gone. 1 is, and 1 is yet to come. At this point in time, Rome had existed as an empire, both as a kingdom, a republic, and eventually as an empire, for round about 700 years. It would exist for about 300 more before it totally collapsed. It would only exist for about 200 more before a Roman emperor split the nation in half, took over the prosperous east, and left the west to die. Rome was not long for this world, at least not in the form that it existed in John's day. And so he makes a promise. Jesus' words on his lips, he makes a promise that there are 5 kings, 5 rulers, symbolic again, the majority of the rulers of Rome, that they're in the past. That Rome is currently here and will be here a little longer, but eventually it will fall. It will go to its destruction. Again, no nation lasts forever, no matter how impossibly strong it looks. He must remain only for a little while. The beast who once was, now is not, is an 8th king and belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. So again, we see, even with the addition of this 8th king, this poetic addition, the 7 plus 1 is something that shows up in Jewish poetry a lot. Even with this addition, we see All of these kings, all these rulers of Rome, they are going to destruction. They will be destroyed. They will be cast away. They will not last forever. Then he says, the 10 horns that you saw, these also symbolize 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. That's really weird because we're talking about Rome, and John keeps reaffirming it. We're definitely talking about Rome, guys. And he says, oh yeah, and there's 10 kings from other kingdoms. And he's not going to give us much information on them. Put yourself in the shoes of an early Christian living in the Roman Empire where you have been oppressed and where maybe you even fear for your life. And John keeps saying, don't worry, Rome is not long for this world. Eventually it will be destroyed. It might be in your lifetime, might be in your children's lifetime, might be in your grandchildren's lifetime. Eventually Rome is going away. My response would be, awesome, that's terrific, because we don't want to live under them anymore. They're really mean to us. So I would like there to be a better nation, a better place where I can live and where I can express my faith and teach it to my children and to my grandchildren without being concerned for the authorities and what they might do to us. But John has a sobering reminder here that even after Rome falls, there will be other kingdoms and there will be other kings that do not follow the way of Jesus. Even seemingly good nations will have rulers that do not follow the way of God. I think we can say with complete certainty that nearly every nation ever to exist has had rulers that do not follow the way of God. Maybe every nation ever to exist. And there are the easy examples, the easy scapegoats. We can look back to the Cold War and point to the USSR, where Christianity was all but outlawed. Or we can look at the People's Republic of China today, where Christianity is permitted so long as you do it under the control of the government. And if you're a part of the underground church, you risk a lot, not only from yourself, but also from your family members. Or North Korea, where Christianity is out and out outlawed, and only people who are visiting from outside of the nation may practice it. And even then, you can still get yourself in some trouble. Those are easy examples. But if we're fully honest with ourselves, our leaders in this nation do not fully represent the character and the desires of God either, do they? Both in their policies and in their personal lives. Some of the people that we raise up as would-be heroes of the church, people that the church works hard to get into office, when we look at the way that they behave in their own private lives, it does not reflect the way of Jesus. There will always be more kings that do not live the way that Jesus would have them live, that do not rule the way that Jesus would have them rule, and we have to be aware of this. While it's great that the Empire of Rome has collapsed, it can no longer hurt God's people, there's always going to be someone else, and the church must stand prepared. They will receive authority for 1 hour, for a short period of time, but then they too will pass away. They have one purpose, and they will give their power and their authority to the beast. The beast, again, is a symbol and a servant of Satan. They will wage war against the Lamb, against the church. But the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, his chosen, and his faithful followers. The emperor of Rome could not triumph over Jesus. Pontius Pilate could not triumph over Jesus. In fact, Satan himself cannot triumph over Jesus. And in the same way, there is no land and no ruler and no political party that will ever conquer Jesus and his people. This is a call to endurance. Even after Rome falls, yes, there will be more kings and more nations that will oppose him, but the church can still stand triumphant. This is encouraging. John's realistic with us. He's honest, but it's encouraging that the Lamb and his church will never fall. The angel then said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. What did I say earlier? Water can represent many people, and the angel explicitly says it here. So this woman, she has control. This woman who we know as Rome has control over so many, but yet she will still fall. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire, which is very much what happens to the Roman Empire. As many nations and peoples, even those who once served Rome, turned against her, and then eventually the Visigoths sacked the city of Rome and the Western Roman Empire falls, beginning what we know in history as the Dark Ages. And Jesus predicts it hundreds of years before it happens. For God has put into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over the beast to their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. In case you missed it, who is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth in the first century? Rome. But she'll be destroyed. And there'll be kings that come after her, political powers that come after her, and they'll oppose God too. And what will happen to them? They'll be destroyed. And who will rule in the end? Jesus. You want the message of Revelation? That's it. There's trouble now, but Jesus is going to win. There's trouble now, and sure, even after these evil rulers or nations or whatever powers that may be passed away, there will be others, but eventually Jesus will win. And what's your job? Just hold on. Stay faithful. Don't give in and follow this great prostitute, this Babylon that is Rome, or that is our current political alliances, or that is whatever nation that comes after. Follow Jesus first and foremost. So I had two goals today. One, I wanted to make Revelation a little bit less confusing. And I know it's like symbols and symbols and symbols, but if you just take your time, one at a time, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And add it together. You come up with a message that's pretty simple. The beast of the sea isn't some mythological creature that's going to crawl out of the Atlantic like what's that movie where you have monsters crawling out of the ocean? They fight them with giant robots. Pacific Rim. It's not Pacific Rim in the Bible, okay? It's a symbol. And it's a pretty acceptable, and while it might be challenging to us, still easy to understand message that there will always be political powers that oppose Jesus. I think we can all agree that that's true, even if we don't want to. But also, I wanted you to feel a little bit more reassured going into this election season. And here's why I find this reassuring. Because regardless of who you vote for, there will always be powers in this nation or in others that oppose the way of God. And if I really wanted to tick everyone off, I could get up here and put up like a spreadsheet and say, here's all the way that Democrats violate the commands of God, and here's all the ways Republicans do. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to start a fight right now. Well, maybe a little bit, but not that badly. And the point is, most of us are going to go in a few weeks, and we're going to vote, and we're probably going to walk away from the polling center going, ugh, I feel like I picked who I had to, but I'm not real happy about it. But Jesus guarantees that regardless of our actions, there will always be those who oppose God. And our job is to remain faithful to the best of our ability. So when you go and you vote, even if 4 months later you end up horribly regretting that decision, know that there is always going to be a ruler that opposes Jesus anyways, whether it's a politician in our country or a dictator in another one. And as long as you have done your best to remain faithful to God, then in the end you are going to be part of that triumphant army, walking with the Lamb when nothing but his kingdom remains. And that should be reassuring to you. That no matter who ends up in power when November is over, no matter who has control of the Senate or of the House, Jesus is ultimately going to rule. And if you aren't happy with your politicians now, you're going to be happy with your politician then. I hope that this is reassuring, and I hope Revelation is a little bit less scary. But if it's not, most of you guys have my phone number. Give me a call, and I can help you through it if you ever decide to tackle the spookiest book in the Bible. Now, let's pray. Lord, we love you, and we appreciate that you give us such a diverse collection of teachings in your scriptures, some of which we can just read through in a breeze and we kind of get, and some we have to slow down and chew on. God, give us the perseverance to read books that are alien and symbolic and strange, like the book of Revelation, and give us the wisdom to pull out the lessons that we need from them. God, give us the perseverance to serve you above all else. And God, give us the reassurance this November that no matter who ends up in power, that you are still in control. Help us to serve you first and foremost in the way that we vote, in the way that we speak, in the way that we think, in the way that we behave in all aspects of our lives. And God, when we fall short, give us grace. Forgive us and restore us and help us to serve your kingdom once again. In Jesus' name, for your holy kingdom we pray.